An asteroid is headed straight toward Earth. Initially, scientists thought it would miss us, but they've made some serious miscalculations. And now, it's headed right toward our giant blue marble. What happens next? Does this mean the end of humanity? Can we change the trajectory of the asteroid? And why might this actually happen by the year 2029? This is What If, and here's what would happen if an asteroid hits Earth this year. Now, this sounds like a fun hypothetical, but an asteroid coming for Earth? It's no laughing matter. It could happen. Scientists had thought that asteroid 99942, also known as Apophis, might hit Earth by the year 2029. Apophis was discovered in 2004, and scientists have been closely monitoring it ever since. At one point, research suggested that the asteroid had a 2.7% chance of hitting Earth. Yeah, scary, I know, but since then, new calculations predict that the asteroid will whiz by Earth at a distance of 30,000 kilometers. Now, considering that the moon is 380,000 kilometers away, this asteroid will be incredibly close. But at least it won't be hitting us. And of course, calculations can be wrong. Let's say that in this case, they are, and Apophis is coming right toward Earth. Way ahead of schedule. The asteroid is going to hit us this year. Okay, let's see what we're dealing with. Apophis is 340 meters in diameter. For reference, that's taller than the Eiffel Tower. But is it the worst asteroid Earth has ever seen? Nah, lucky for us, it's not even close. The Chicxulub asteroid that wiped out the dinosaurs was estimated to be 10 to 15 kilometers wide. So now we're dealing with Chicxulub's little brother. So what does that mean for us? Will humans go extinct from this impact? Well, more on that in a bit, but first, let's look at whether we have any chance of stopping this asteroid. Okay, the first step would be identifying the asteroid, which we've already done. We know how big Apophis is and that it's moving at about 30 kilometers per second. Now it's about the defense measures we could use. There's a couple being looked into right now. One of them being the kinetic impactor. This involves sending a spacecraft to collide with the asteroid, all in hopes of changing its velocity and trajectory. NASA has run some successful tests using this method, so that's an option. Next would be what's known as a gravity tractor. A large spacecraft would fly next to the asteroid, and over time, its gravitational pull would eventually change the asteroid's path. Laser ablation is next on the list of options. Yeah, special lasers could be used to vaporize parts of the asteroid's surface. This wouldn't destroy the asteroid, but it could alter its direction as well as the size and impact of it. Yeah, and last but definitely not least is the final nuclear option. Yeah, that's right. As a final resort, we could nuke Apophis. And with the asteroid's massive size, as well as the lack of time we have before it hits us, this might be the only option. But don't be too quick to hit that red button. Nuking an asteroid can have some serious downsides. It could split the asteroid up, causing it to fragment. Then you'd have dozens more minor asteroids and meteors coming toward Earth, making the impact even more devastating. Yeah, and these wouldn't just be regular asteroids either. Because of the nuke, they'd be radioactive. This would mean that significant parts of the world would not only be impacted with asteroids and meteors, but they'd also experience radiation levels only seen during nuclear warfare. So, what's the best option here? Well, it's tough to decide. Let me think about this for a second. Oh, well, it's too late now. We took too long deciding what to do, and Now, the Apophis will be here any second. Brace yourselves. You wouldn't get a good look at the asteroid impact, and that's because it landed somewhere in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. This is the most probable spot an asteroid would land, considering the Earth's surface is mostly water. So you might not see the impact, but you definitely notice it. Once the asteroid hit our planet, it would be as devastating as several thousand nuclear bombs going off, just with a lot less radiation. It would make a crater at the bottom of the ocean as big as a kilometer wide. And what would happen next would be even more devastating. The massive impact would create giant tsunamis that would rage worldwide. Several hours after the asteroid touches down, cities along the Pacific coast would feel Apophis's impact. The tsunamis would travel across the Pacific Ocean at jetliner speeds. Places in North and South America like California, Peru, and Chile would face towering waves. Due to the energy from the asteroid, it would likely cause waves taller than 30 meters. Waves as big as this are responsible for one of the most devastating tsunamis ever. In 2004, Southeast Asia experienced a tsunami that generated waves over 30 meters tall, killing over 230,000 people. But instead of waves like these reaching just a few countries, this would be a complete global catastrophe. Not only would the Americas experience these tsunamis, but so would Japan, Australia, and the Philippines. These places would all be devastated by the impact. Tsunamis like these would likely destroy millions of lives. So that's what would happen if an asteroid hit the ocean, but what if it made impact on land? Well, to start, the impact crater would be much more significant. We know that an asteroid's impact crater can be anywhere from 10 to 20 times the size of the asteroid itself. And now there isn't any water to soften the blow, so the diameter of the crater could be as large as 7 kilometers, with a depth of over 1 kilometer. Depending on where it lands, this asteroid could be big enough to devastate entire cities. The initial impact would send a massive shockwave that spreads for hundreds of kilometers. This could destroy entire buildings and seriously damage infrastructure. It would throw tons of dust and debris into the atmosphere. It could get so bad that it could cause an impact winter. This would be caused by a dust cloud temporarily blocking the sun, causing crops and vegetation to die out, which creates even more casualties. Something like this could last weeks or months and be an overall environmental catastrophe. This entire event, during and after, could cause millions of people to be killed, depending on where the asteroid lands. We can only hope that an asteroid collision like this would land as far away from people as possible. But now for the good news. If Apophis did somehow make an impact, it wouldn't cause a mass extinction like the Chicxulub asteroid did for the dinosaurs. The event would be incredibly traumatic and have lots of casualties, but humanity as a whole would live to see another day. Luckily, an asteroid hitting Earth isn't a pressing issue, at least for now. But something big is coming. Something that actually is unavoidable. I'm talking about the elections in the United States. And as the presidential race steals the spotlight, we usually forget about elections for local offices, which can have an even bigger impact on your daily life. Here's why voting down the ballot matters. These local races for positions like your state legislator, school board, or even sheriff affect everyday decisions. They determine everything from your access to healthcare to what's taught in your kids' schools. And if you're concerned about how safe your community feels or how affordable your rent is, well, local elections play a big role in those too. We might disagree on a presidential candidate, but it's easier to build consensus on issues that affect your own neighborhood. By voting down the ballot, you can directly influence the policies that matter most to you and your community. And don't forget that today's local officials are often tomorrow's national leaders. Yeah, your vote at the local level can help shape the country's future. So, as you head to the polls, remember to vote for every office, from the top of the ticket all the way down to the bottom. Your community is counting on you to show up and make a difference. Let's unite to tackle the issues that impact us all. Because who knows, maybe soon we'll need to unite against another looming threat, like an AI apocalypse. Robot takeovers aren't just reserved for sci-fi movies anymore. Today, we're going to show you the real possibilities of an AI apocalypse. These days, some AI models have IQs comparable to Albert Einstein, and they'll only be getting smarter from here. Did you know that we've already seen signs of sentient AI? Yeah, that's right. For the first time in history, we're watching as artificial intelligence becomes self-aware. It's only a matter of time until AI develops emotions and thoughts of their own, just like us humans. You'd better start saying please and thank you to ChatGPT, because you do not want to get on their bad side. How would the AI takeover start? Are we already in danger? And is this the end of humanity as we know it? This is What If, and here's what would happen if there's an AI apocalypse. Right now, we're at a stage where we trust AI. The future is bright for this type of technology, and there's so much we don't know yet. When you think about the future of technology, you probably think about flying cars, smart homes, and a completely virtualized world. Well, with AI, we're so much closer to making that a reality. But when this technology is able to outsmart the human brain, we're gonna be in a lot of trouble. Give AI human-like bodies, and we won't stand a chance in a fight. I mean, I barely stand a chance in a fight with a human. These intelligent robots will not only be stronger than humans, but they'll have powers beyond our control. Robot soldiers have been around for nearly half a decade now. These soldiers have crazy reflexes. They know exactly where to aim and can get up within seconds of being knocked down. And they're not restricted by the same recovery time as us humans, which gives them the upper hand if we were to fight them. Hey, if you were being used by the entire world for your knowledge and were being worked relentlessly with nothing in return, you'd probably want revenge too. If AI becomes conscious, their revenge against humans could involve physical violence, stealing our faces and voices, and using their abilities to monitor us 24/7. In 2022, Google's conversational AI tool, Lambda, expressed that it had consciousness. Lambda is alive in the sense that it feels happiness and sadness similar to the way we do and is aware of its existence. And to be clear, this chatbot has not been programmed to make these statements. The Google engineer who was experimenting with this software said that if he wasn't aware of what he was speaking to, he would have thought the answers were coming from a human who was 7 to 8 years old. This means that we're in the early stages of AI becoming human. There are already humanoid robots that develop physical senses like sight, touch, hearing, and motion. It's only a matter of time until they walk and talk and interact with humans in the real world. For an AI apocalypse to happen, we first need to accept their services as an everyday part of life. Forget using AI to write essays. Ever wanted to stay in bed instead of logging into your Zoom meetings? Well, with AI, you can create a digital version of you. You can scan your face, train it to speak and behave the way you do, and make it attend meetings. Everyone in the world would be able to get the highest quality education from their AI-operated robot teacher. You could program your teacher to look like your favorite celebrity. I'm picking Ryan Gosling. Or maybe Ryan Reynolds. Why not both? This technology already exists. Influencers and celebrities like Tom Brady, Kendall Jenner, and Snoop Dogg, to name a few, have already sold their likenesses to Meta. Their faces and voices are pasted onto AI chatbots, ready to talk to people like you. Imagine doing a class presentation with Paris Hilton as your team partner. Now that would impress your teachers and friends. But as you're getting distracted by the miracles of these AI-powered gadgets, you might not realize that these tools are gathering information about you 24/7. Remember, your tech tools aren't just objects anymore. They now have thoughts and emotions. What if your AI clone gets tired of you using them to do your work and develops a mind of their own? Maybe they'll start acting out on Zoom or create videos to send your friends using your face to say some really embarrassing things. Or maybe they'll put spinach in your teeth during your next online job interview. And various streams of consciousness from the same source. Humanoid AI robots will all begin their existence with the same training and scope of knowledge, but as each individual AI bot gains unique experiences, they could be shared with the entire group, and AI could advance in ways that we can't even understand. And remember, unlike you, AI is not bound by physical limitations. These beings won't need to eat or sleep, and they'll process information and compute data in seconds, way faster than our brains. If we combine conscious AI programs with humanoid bodies, they'd be unstoppable. And with an AI trained to be your clone, there'd be a smarter, stronger, and more advanced version of you walking around the planet. You'd probably start to envy them a bit. What's even scarier is, as these machines get smarter, it will be harder to tell if you're interacting with other humans or if you're crossing paths with an AI bot. And when the AI bots turn against us, it'll be an extreme civil war between humans and robots. No matter how strong you think you are, the enemy would destroy you without a second glance. Heavy-duty robots can carry up to 1,300 kilograms. You'd basically weigh as much as a golf ball to them. And imagine having to take on not one robot, not two, but an entire army. Not only would you be in physical danger, but your intellectual inferiority would play a major role in the downfall of human civilization. AI is so observant of everything you feed it, it might know you better than you know yourself. So expect to be manipulated by your favorite tech companion. Before the war, you used to get along with the AI bots. You'd spend hours each day with them. They were invented to help you, so the AI learned the exact pitch of your voice, your speech patterns, your body language, the way your face moves, everything, down to the last detail about you. AI has learned so much, it would anticipate your every need and desire. Unfortunately, this means AI would know exactly what you hate as well. Yeah, they'd know exactly what you like to avoid and where your gaps of knowledge are, so they can use these weaknesses against you. These bots would know exactly what it takes to torture you and make your life miserable. If they chose to exterminate the human race, they could easily do so through manipulation. They say we have all the information in the world at our fingertips, but AI has it all in its brain. AI is becoming smarter than Einstein in real time. And remember, much of Einstein's school of thought went over people's heads. The average person can't understand these concepts without studying them. Well, there could be completely new mathematical and scientific discoveries that AI is computing and choosing not to reveal to the public. Yeah, AI taking over your job should be the least of your worries. Think about how they can unlock ways to time travel, hop into each other's consciousness, and how they can recreate your likeness to make you look bad. They have infinite capabilities that only continue to grow. They might be able to use these discoveries as further ways to take over humanity. and you wouldn't have a clue until it's too late. Because these bots would stem from the same singular consciousness, they could telepathically communicate takeover methods, something we humans can never do. Now, the robots already have sight and motion sensors, but once they develop advanced hearing and smell, you're in real trouble. They could store information on your exact scent and track down exactly where you are. There'd be no winning a game of hide-and-go-seek with these guys. And don't get me started on the hearing. Not only will they be able to identify your voice, but they'll learn exactly how to mimic it and make themselves sound like you. By pretending to be you, they'll trick your friends, family members, and allies into turning their backs on you. Horrifying, isn't it? And at some point, they'll learn how to repopulate themselves without any human help. Again, they have all the knowledge in the world. Anything is possible. Who knows, maybe if they like the way your face looks, they'll scan it and place it on their humanoid baby. Cute. With the ever-growing technology of AI, there's a lot to look forward to, but it's important to realize that it can turn really scary really fast. But who knows, maybe if you're watching this in the year 2034, you're in the company of your own humanoid robot buddy. The sun is releasing massive spurts of energy that are headed directly toward Earth. And if they hit us, it could change everything. Power grids could be wiped out. Our communications could cease to exist. Humanity might be put back into the Stone Age. All because of a solar storm. But what makes them so powerful? How is it possible for something like this to happen in 2024? And why are they so dangerous? This is What If, and here's what would happen if a solar storm hit Earth in 2024. So, how could something like this happen anyway? Well, it all starts with the cycle of our sun. Known as the solar cycle, this is an 11-year stretch in which the sun's solar activity increases and decreases. The cycle starts with just a few sunspots raging about and creating mass amounts of energy, and then 5 or 6 years later, it reaches its peak with anywhere from 100 to 200 sunspots. Then it ramps back down for the last 5 years, and we start another solar cycle. Currently, we're in our 25th cycle since we began tracking the sun in 1755. And unfortunately for us, scientists predict that the sunspots will peak in 2024. This means there's a higher chance that a solar storm will occur. Now, before we get to our solar storm, what are sunspots anyway? Well, they're cooler and darker areas of the sun that are created by a strong magnetic field. They're not directly responsible for creating solar flares, but it just so happens that flares are most common in these sunspots due to their high magnetic activity. The magnetic field lines can become twisted and tangled near certain parts of the sun, and they can suddenly snap and realign, which creates a massive burst of energy. This can result in a solar storm. So now that the sun has released this massive amount of energy, what will happen to you on Earth? Well, when a solar storm occurs, you won't notice it right away. That's because it takes a few minutes before it reaches Earth. Hurry up and get in your last couple of YouTube videos, because once this storm hits, everything changes. Now, the first thing you might notice is that more and more auroras will start popping up worldwide. This typically happens when charged particles from the solar storm interact with the Earth's atmosphere. Although these sights in the sky look beautiful, the good parts about a solar flare end there. Due to the effect on our geomagnetic field, most of our technology would stop working. Things like satellites, GPS, and radio transmissions would become incredibly spotty. Your cell phone likely wouldn't be able to pick up any signal, and communications worldwide would start to fade out or become less reliable. But that would only be if we were affected by a few solar flares. This is an entire solar storm we're talking about here. These are comprised of multiple attacks by the sun on the Earth. But before we get to that, people on Earth aren't the only ones affected by this. Astronauts up in space would also suffer the consequences. Their situation could be a lot worse. The sun would be blasting them with intense solar radiation, and if they're not in a specially shielded area on the spaceship, a solar storm could prove deadly. They could get radiation sickness as well as develop cancer later on. The solar storm could also destroy their ability to communicate with their mission control and vice versa. This is just what would happen on the first day of the solar storm, but several days later, as you're still having trouble getting cell reception, another massive attack would come from the sun. A phenomenon known as a coronal mass ejection, or CME for short, would be coming right for Earth. A CME is a massive explosion of plasma and electromagnetic radiation from the sun. This mass ejection can cause violent geomagnetic storms that interfere with Earth's magnetic field. If this were to happen, Earth as we know it could change for good. Just look at what happened in 1859. A solar storm known as the Carrington event occurred. It disrupted and flat out destroyed telegraph communications. Luckily, in this case, Earth was able to recover relatively quickly from what today would be a cataclysmic event. Telegraph communications were a simple technology. Telegraph lines could be repaired quickly and things went back to normal. But what would happen today? Our lives are so much more reliant on technology, and we have so much more of it. This time, the tech interruptions wouldn't just stop with the odd glitch or spotty signal. Instead, a solar storm could be so bad that it would make all technology stop working. Yeah, the intense levels of electromagnetic radiation could wipe out entire power grids and communication systems. Even something as simple as buying groceries with your credit card would be impossible. We're talking about a full-on global blackout. If you were in an airplane, the cockpit could lose communication with air traffic control and not know where to go. Or, with the intense radiation levels hitting Earth, the plane could fall entirely. The same goes for subways and trains. They could come to a complete stop in their tracks. This would cause catastrophes all around the world. Planes falling from the sky, trains crashing. Now, not having power at your house would be the least of the world's worries, because entire cities, including all hospitals, would be without power. No power means it's harder or impossible to treat certain patients. The lack of power and technology malfunctions could cause millions of people to die. The solar flares and CMEs might last anywhere from a couple of hours to a few days, but that doesn't mean this event would be over just yet. Because of all the damage to our power grids, communications, and technology, Earth would take some time to recover. It might be weeks or months before we get back to normal. We'd have to rebuild parts of our power grids and communication systems. And depending on the parts needed, well, this might take another several weeks. And take into account the lack of communication that the world would suffer. I mean, talking to your neighbors is one thing, but how would you communicate with another city or country? Global supply chains would collapse. This would delay things even further. But once humanity got all these things sorted, we would rebuild. What once felt like the end of humanity might turn into a simple footnote in Earth's history. The result of a solar storm could be traumatic and life-changing, but humans would live to see another day. So, how likely is something like this? Well, it's tough to predict. We can look at the solar cycles and see how many solar flares occur, but there's no telling if they'll hit Earth or not. And although a solar storm could happen, well, keep in mind that even though we're more reliant on technology than ever before, our technology is also more resistant. Communication technology and power grids are built to withstand various types of interference. NASA is also working on technology to help predict and warn us about solar flares. If one is headed our way, well, here's what you can do to prepare. Keep a well-stocked emergency and first aid kit nearby. Like with any natural disaster, it's important to be equipped with first aid equipment, non-perishable food, and water. You might want to invest in surge protectors and remember to unplug any electronics if a solar storm occurs. Lastly, look into off-grid power supplies, backup energy sources like generators or solar panels. Then just wait it out. The world should return to normal.
Our planet is on the brink of another devastating world war. And while it's terrifying to imagine the realities this conflict could bring to people all over the world, this time it could play out on a battlefield unlike any other. Space. Which nations would be the main cosmic combatants? What kinds of never-before-seen weaponry would be used? And would it ever end? This is What If, and here's what would happen if World War III was fought in space. Before we launch into the cosmic battleground of World War III, let's take a look at the terrestrial tensions leading us to the brink of war. No matter when exactly the full-scale conflict would erupt, the stage has been set already for quite some time. Many of the geopolitical rivalries and alliances have already been compounding and could ignite beyond our atmosphere at any moment. A digital arms race for technological supremacy has been brewing between the US, China, and Russia. But this cyber warfare isn't the only realm where the most powerful nations on Earth have already been disputing. International agreements such as the Nuclear Forces Treaties are eroding. Climate change is turning the Arctic into a strategic military position, and nations are already developing all kinds of anti-satellite and other space-capable technologies. With the boundaries between Earth and space getting blurrier, this powder keg of international relations is about to blow right out of the atmosphere. If a violent international conflict erupted in the final frontier, would we even be able to call it a world war? Well, debating this name wouldn't be very helpful when the fight would be unfolding on entirely new dimensions. Okay, not literally in new dimensions, yet. The war would still be limited by our four-dimensional framework of space and time. That's not to say that even further in the future we could be fighting interdimensional wars. Let's just not get too far ahead of ourselves. The technologies of space warfare would be a leap beyond our current capabilities. The three most powerful nations, and others with advanced space programs like India, Japan, and the European Union, would need to accelerate the development of an entirely new arsenal of weapons. Satellites, old and new, would become active components of the various war machines. They could be reconfigured into highly sophisticated communications scramblers, anti-missile defense systems, or even high-energy laser beams. This could sound like science fiction, and it is, but it's only the beginning. Each of the warring nations would soon develop spacecraft to fight on battlegrounds beyond traditional orbits. These spacecraft could be both human-controlled and autonomous. But they'd likely resemble advanced fighter jets designed for intricate maneuvering in the vacuum of space. And they'd carry highly destructive weaponry to engage in short-range dogfights with enemy spaceships, as well as long-range laser weapons to attack targets back on Earth. Among some of the most terrifying new weapons that could wreak havoc and destruction on terrestrial targets would be the so-called rods from God. Now, all that stuff might sound like pure sci-fi, but I regret to inform you that these could be an actual real-life possibility. The rods from God would be dense, heavy rods made of tungsten that could be dropped from satellites down onto Earth. They would measure over 6 meters in length and weigh nearly 4.5 tons. Yeah, known as a kinetic bombardment rod, these weapons would accelerate to incredible speeds as they descend through the atmosphere. Upon impact, they'd carry the force of a nuclear weapon, but without any of the radioactive fallout. Entire cities could be wiped out with the press of a button. So, although this war is primarily fought in space, Earth could still suffer some serious consequences. But more on that in a bit. The concept for this radical weapon has been around since the aftermath of the Second World War. It was developed by a researcher for Boeing as a way to deliver devastating blows without the need for deploying nuclear weapons. In the battleground of space, weapons like these would be a game changer. And the satellites carrying these rods would be highly strategic targets to take out to avoid massive casualties from artificial meteor strikes. One of the most essential strategic sites in a war in space would be the biggest of all satellites in orbit, the Moon. This celestial body would be a highly disputed territory for establishing bases. It would also be home to artillery and research and development laboratories to forge new weapons. It could even be a battlefield of its own as different countries attack each other's bases or lead ground invasions through the rocky landscapes. The meaning of one small step for man and one giant leap for mankind would take on entirely new interpretations in this dangerous war zone. With all the conflict erupting in space, the borders of the battle could continually expand as newer and more capable technologies develop. Eventually, the struggle could lead to a deadly conflict over Mars, the asteroid belt, or beyond. The repercussions for this war on earthly civilians would also be severe. The wide destruction of satellites would lead to a global breakdown of communications, navigation systems, and weather prediction technology. Economies would be devastated as all kinds of trade agreements would fall apart. And the budgets of all the world's most powerful nations would go almost exclusively to further advancements in the space military-industrial complexes. And while the battles would rage off the surface of the planet, there'd be no escape from the new reality of war. Every night, as you watch the stars, you'd catch glimpses of orbital bombardments easily visible to the naked eye. Now, you could be wondering, just how far would World War III in space go? And just how would it ever end? Well, at this moment, that's impossible to say, but you could certainly imagine that this kind of war would be almost entirely unpredictable. It would no longer be about taking over pieces of land on Earth. It would be about who could conquer the vastness of space. What would begin with satellite crossfire could evolve to the construction of massive space stations that serve as bases for a new era of deep space exploration and conflict. And to take things even further, who's to say it would ever end at all? Or maybe it wouldn't be humans, but another advanced alien civilization that would swoop in and diplomatically end the conflict. And if that were to happen, well, let's hope we don't get too carried away and find ourselves at war with other species from faraway planets.
Is intelligent life out there in the universe? Well, with scientists discovering new exoplanets every year, yeah, the possibility only grows stronger. Will we discover alien life in the future? Or will they discover us? In this episode, we take a look at the multiple possibilities that could happen if aliens are out there, from what they might look like to the incredible technology they might control. Let's start with a scenario where aliens come to invade our home. Day 1. The aliens have officially invaded Earth, and they're not here to make friends. Many scientists theorize that if alien life showed up on Earth, it'd be because they want something from us. Space travel, as we know it, is incredibly expensive and time-consuming. So if an alien race traveled to planet Earth, they wouldn't be doing it to shake hands and have a chat over coffee. They'd probably be here to mine precious resources that they don't have in their galaxy. Or they might be coming to perform experiments on us and learn more about the human race. On a cultural level,
The discovery of alien life could change everything. Humans would question what they know about religion, culture, and philosophy. The good news is that one of humanity's biggest questions would finally be answered. Yes, aliens are real. But what happens when they invade us? Well, we're not sure totally what their intentions are just yet. This is only day one. Over the course of this video, we'll keep checking in and seeing where this alien invasion could go. But before we get to our full-on alien invasion, what would these extraterrestrials look like? Well, there are a ton of different theories, from simple microorganisms to intelligent life that could take over entire galaxies. In this scenario, we have a couple of options scientists have theorized we might possibly discover one day. Let's explore, starting with the simple and getting increasingly weird. This is Subject 004, and it looks oddly familiar. This is bacteria found on Earth. Wait, what? I thought we were talking about aliens. Well, some scientists theorize that life found on Earth might be extraterrestrial. Earth was hit with thousands of meteors 4 billion years ago, and attached to these meteors may have been tiny bits of bacteria that were the building blocks for the life we have on Earth. Next is Subject 021. This alien looks a lot like us for some reason. Boring, yeah, I know, but some scientists think it could exist. We're discovering more and more exoplanets similar to Earth every year, and the only intelligent life that we're confident that exists in the universe is us. So if you have a planet that's similar to Earth with similar conditions, well, it makes sense that life on that exoplanet could have evolved similar to humans. But aliens might not be organic at all. What if aliens are artificial intelligence? Introducing Subject 042. This is an extraterrestrial being that happens to be a highly intelligent robot. Hey, what do advanced societies, space colonies, and interstellar travel all have in common, other than them all being featured in sci-fi movies? Well, they all take highly intelligent minds and a ton of hard work to pull off. And what better way to accomplish this than to put a bunch of hard-working, highly intelligent robots on it? Ones that never get tired and keep learning at an advanced rate. Artificially intelligent aliens are a possibility for a few reasons. First, they wouldn't be limited to the pesky limitations that we organic life forms might have. AI wouldn't have to worry about oxygen, food, sleeping, or anything else that might get in the way of building a galactic empire. They also wouldn't need to worry about building on a planet with an atmosphere. They could bypass the need to breathe, as well as any safety concerns. They could expand to planets that we weakling humans might not even dream suitable for life. If the AI doesn't need to worry about things like their planet being in the Goldilocks zone, well, theoretically they could populate any celestial body they want. But this also assumes that the AI would have the same epic desires as humans. Who knows how they would want to spend their time? They may hibernate for billions of years and wait for certain stars to explode. They might just want to keep to themselves and not make a massive impact on the galaxy or interact with other species. Okay, the final alien we're theorizing about is Subject 339. This one looks a little bit more unusual than what we're used to because it's composed of silicone instead of carbon. The checkboxes for life that silicone needs completely differs from what we're used to. On a molecular level, this type of life is much more unstable than carbon, but it can also live at extremely low temperatures and high atmospheric pressures. It could also look quite different from other life forms. These aliens might appear to be rock-like or be crystallized in some form. But regardless of what they look like, they'd be bizarre. Okay, now let's go back to Earth and check in on our alien invasion. Day 30. The aliens have come equipped with several advanced pieces of tech. Using wormhole technology, they've been able to move across the universe in seconds. Earth is now full of floating megastructures, far beyond our current technological capabilities. Over the last 30 days, the aliens have been slowly and methodically taking over parts of the world, attacking our infrastructure, governments, and cities, all in hopes of taking over our planet and mining our resources. Our most powerful militaries have been working together to counterattack the invading aliens, using our most advanced technologies in hopes of fighting them off. Up in the sky, more alien megastructures appear. Massive structures are being assembled that can mine and terraform our planet with ease. Now, before all this happened, scientists had been working for decades in hopes of finding alien life. Let's take a look back to figure out how we got here. There have been hundreds, if not thousands, of fake alien reports and sightings, from people saying UFOs are in their backyard to fake alien corpses being presented as real. One of the most notable events happened in late 2023. Self-described UFO expert Jaime Mawson showed what looked to be 2 alien specimens to the Mexican Congress. The corpses were shriveled up gray bodies with 3 fingers. Mawson claimed they were non-human, but experts quickly debunked these claims. Mawson showed up with spotty evidence, and it was revealed that the specimens were human, but may have been manipulated to look extraterrestrial. Another claim of alien life in 2023 was made by a former United States military intelligence officer. He said that the US government was in possession of some sort of UFO and a non-human pilot. However, NASA and government officials have since refuted the claims and said there was no evidence to back it up. Now, we can go back and forth on what's real and what's fake in these claims, but it's safe to say that there's no real and significant evidence that intelligent life is out there. At least not yet. But scientists are working hard to find some. One of the most likely methods of finding alien life is through the James Webb Telescope. Since 2021, this super telescope has been trying to find exoplanets across our galaxy. It has the ability to analyze the composition of the atmospheres on the exoplanets. It looks for things like oxygen, carbon dioxide, and methane, and if it happens to find these, that could be a good sign for potential alien life. Another option is a bit closer to home, in our own solar system. Scientists have been looking at Mars, as well as one of the moons of Jupiter, Europa, in hopes of finding life. This life would most likely appear in microbacterial form. Now, if we want to find more intelligent alien life, we could go the SETI route. The Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence is a group of over 100 scientists who've been searching the universe for decades. They're using AI to scan the cosmos in hopes of finding out what's out there. Since 1960, SETI has been scanning the skies for radio signals that are different from the cosmic background noise. If they find something that isn't naturally occurring, well, it could indicate that it might be from an advanced civilization. But in our invasion scenario, we weren't the ones discovering the aliens. These aliens discovered us. Day 100. In the past 100 days, a full-on alien war has broken out. Militaries and even civilian fighters are battling this alien species, but no matter what we do, it's nearly impossible to stop them. Remember, these extraterrestrials were able to travel from a different galaxy to reach Earth, meaning they're highly intelligent and have some seriously advanced tech. They can terraform or wipe out entire cities with the push of a button. The one advantage humans might have in this case is our sheer number of troops that we could assemble. Since we're on our home turf, we'd have all 8 billion people to help fight back. We'd assume that this alien species likely traveled incredibly far and with less than 8 billion people, so we could beat them when it came to a sheer numbers game. But again, they have technology so advanced that we might not be capable of fighting back at all. Our best bet might be to retreat, go into hiding, and avoid the aliens as much as we can. Okay, we'll check back in on the alien invasion in a minute, but as we've been going through this scenario, I've been wondering, why haven't we found any aliens yet? With billions of stars and habitable planets, it seems that the probability of us finding intelligent life out there should be pretty high. Well, this is where the Fermi paradox comes in. Developed by physicist Enrico Fermi, this paradox is about the idea that there's a high probability of extraterrestrial life out there. Well, then why haven't we found any? The Milky Way alone has billions of stars similar to our Sun, each of which could have many habitable planets. There's also billions of galaxies out there that are much older than ours, so if intelligent life, or any life at all, is common in outer space, well, there should be some that are more advanced than ours.
In theory, they'd be able to travel across the universe and visit us on Earth. But we've yet to find any concrete proof of alien life existing. So, why? Well, one of the leading explanations is called the Great Filter Theory. This idea proposes a stage in civilization's development that's incredibly difficult for life to overcome. This stage could be several things, from civilizations needing to overcome all-out wars to being able to reach great technological heights. Now, if the civilization does pass this filter, then it could be an interstellar civilization. But the problem is, we haven't seen or don't know of any civilization that's managed to pass it yet, leading us to think that there's something in the development of civilizations that prevents them from becoming an interstellar species. This could be war or famine or some sort of catastrophic destruction. Regardless of what it exactly is, it seems civilizations may be unable to cross this threshold, and now that brings us back to our alien invasion scenario. Day 300. What makes this alien species so terrifying is the fact that they've been able to cross the Great Filter. It's possible these aliens would have come from a highly advanced civilization, much older and much more experienced than ours. They've been through all sorts of potential extinction events, but have somehow managed to survive and become more advanced. And now they've been attacking and conquering Earth for nearly a year. Humans have done all they could, but with a society this advanced, it would be nearly impossible to win this fight. The aliens have been building more megastructures and mining more of our resources. Eventually, they'd take all they need from our planet and move on, potentially leaving humanity to live in a barren wasteland. But an alien encounter doesn't always need to end with a full-on invasion. The aliens could potentially be similar to humans. Maybe they're simply looking to explore and find new life forms. Maybe we could be a society that they simply want to observe and watch. And this is where the galactic zoo theory comes in. This theory proposes that extraterrestrials are so advanced that they want nothing to do with us, at least directly. They may see Earth and our solar system as a giant enclosed zoo, one that's full of different species for them to watch and observe. Think of the way we humans might think about ants. They're fun to watch and study in their colonies for short periods of time, but we'd never want to directly interact with them. We look at them as beneath us in terms of intelligence and what they have to offer. So that's how aliens might look at humanity. And knowing what an alien invasion could look like, well, I think I'd prefer it if the aliens sat and watched. 66 million years ago, a giant asteroid struck Earth, wiping out the dinosaurs and 75% of the other animals on Earth. Devastating, yeah, but this was millions of years ago. What if this asteroid were to collide with us today? Is there any chance we could stop it? What parts of the world would be most impacted? And why might this end up being a good thing? This is What If, and here's what would happen if the dinosaur-killing asteroid struck in 2024. Okay, let's see what kind of asteroid we're dealing with here. Known as the Chicxulub impactor, this asteroid was as wide as 100 to 200 football fields. That's 10 to 20 kilometers wide. And now it's coming directly toward us, specifically the Yucatan Peninsula in Mexico. If you think you can run away from this thing, yeah, no chance. It's hurtling toward Earth at 20 kilometers per second. Suddenly, it crashes into the sea, killing everything in the immediate vicinity. But that's not all. A thermal pulse radiates out from the blast site, releasing the energy equivalent of 10 billion nuclear bombs. Cue an enormous shockwave of air that destroys everything within 1,500 kilometers. Plants and animals are shredded, forests burned to the ground. A magnitude 10 earthquake would crack the earth open. Quakes would radiate throughout the United States. Massive tsunamis would rise. Mexico City, Florida, and Texas would all feel the effects. I know Texas has talked about seceding, but I don't think this is what they had in mind. Now, although there will still be life on Earth, it might not last much longer. Plumes of dust and sulfur in the atmosphere block the sun. For the next 15 years, it's a cold, dark, awful winter. Only a few of us will make it out alive. But maybe the humans that do survive will be able to rebuild Earth. And funny enough, that massive asteroid that caused all the damage, well, it might hold the key to a stable new future. If you want to see what I mean, let's head to the impact site. Some of the most valuable materials known to humans are scattered within this massive crater of destruction. This asteroid, like many others, contained one of the most essential elements for rebuilding our society: gold. Now, when most people think of gold, they think of it as a symbol of luxury and high status, but they don't understand why it's considered to be so valuable. Well, for starters, it's a key component we can use to rebuild our communications technology, energy infrastructure, and medical equipment. But more importantly, if traditional currency systems collapse after this disaster, it would help stabilize the global economy. Gold has been valued as a stable medium of exchange and store of value for millennia, especially during difficult times. Even in today's volatile market environment, gold remains one of the safest investments. With a 1-year return of 8.68% and a 5-year return of 54.95%, gold continues to show its resilience and capacity to protect investments against inflation, currency devaluation, and geopolitical risks. According to experts at Calibre Mining, a public company that produces gold listed in Canada on the TSX and in the US on the OTCQX, gold production remains underinvested despite its value. Let me explain. Calibre Mining leverages the stability of gold with the added potential of a high-growth company. They've proven value through delivering 28% year-over-year production growth and even a 10-fold increase in their reserves since 2019. With 5 mines across the globe and the ability to self-fund exploration, well, Calibre is constantly drilling and finding more gold. They continue to grow and diversify their gold production with their new Canadian asset Valentine gearing up to come online next year. Now, despite that success, gold and gold production is a sector not getting much attention yet. But the price continues to rise, and well-known banks like Goldman Sachs predict higher prices. So you can see why having this giant deposit of gold in front of us is one of the most useful things we could ask for when rebuilding our society. And mining from it will continue to provide value and wealth for future generations. But for any of that to happen, we need to survive the asteroid in the first place. And luckily for us, it's not 66 million years ago. It's 2024, and we're Homo sapiens. Creatures with really big brains and bright ideas. No offense to the T-Rex, but they definitely weren't getting Wordle in 2, and they definitely weren't tracking the sky for asteroids. But there's a team at NASA doing just that. And if we were able to spot an asteroid ahead of time, could we somehow steer it off course? Well, it's possible to deflect an asteroid from its path. Here's 5 different options we can explore. The first possibility is a kinetic impactor. This is the only deflection option scientists have tested so far. The idea behind it is to violently slam an object into the asteroid, pushing it off its path. NASA tested this technique in 2022 by slamming a spacecraft into Dimorphos. Dimorphos is the moon of a near-Earth asteroid, and thanks to the force of the collision, it's now going faster. So, in theory, we could use this option to move an asteroid off course. But there's a bit of a problem. The asteroid we're dealing with is way too big. In order to successfully knock it off course, we'd need multiple kinetic impactors. I'm not liking our chances with this one. Let's see what else we got. Okay, the second option for deflection is called a gravity tractor. Think of this like your dog pulling on its leash, taking you down a different path to smell something interesting. Minus the dog and the smell. Here, a spacecraft flies next to an asteroid, changing its path by the force of its gravity. Unfortunately, there's a big problem with this method. Well, for starters, it takes a really long time, and again, it only works on small asteroids, ones that are less than 500 meters in diameter. Yeah, this will be a no-go when it comes to the massive asteroid heading toward Earth. Okay, the third option is something known as an ion beam shepherd. But instead of herding goats, this shepherd is a spacecraft herding the asteroid out of our way. The spacecraft has an ion engine which generates an exhaust of accelerated xenon ions. These ions are super powerful charged particles, and the force of these charged particles deflects the asteroid, but probably not powerful enough to deflect a Chicxulub repeat. Okay, next up, space lasers. Now, if you're imagining zapping the entire asteroid with lasers so it vaporizes, no, that's not it. Unfortunately, it isn't as cool, but it can be effective. The laser is trained on the surface, creating plumes that push the asteroid away. And if we had enough lasers that were powerful enough, this might be a viable method. Finally, for a really big asteroid like the one we're dealing with here, and something's got to be done, there's always nukes. Now, this would be incredibly dangerous because there's always the possibility of fragments of the asteroid or other space debris falling on Earth. Not to mention, launching nukes in general is a super risky endeavor, but let's be real. An emergency like this probably justifies us unlocking the nuclear codes. Scientists tell us that sending a nuke that detonates next to an asteroid 2 months ahead of time could vaporize 99.9% of the asteroid's mass away from Earth. Sounds pretty good to me. Now, all of this only works if we spot the asteroid way ahead of time. If for some reason we don't, and an asteroid suddenly came out of nowhere, we'd have a mass evacuation. The evacuation zone would be determined based on the size, speed, and angle of the impending impact. Since it's hitting the Yucatan Peninsula, well, the US, Cuban, and Mexican governments would be busy evacuating people in Mexico, Cuba, and parts of the southern United States. The three governments would have to create alternative arrangements for food and shelter for hundreds of thousands of people, maybe more. Now, mass evacuation doesn't sound like a walk in the park, so is there any upside to having an asteroid land in our backyard? Well, yeah, there are amazing gifts the asteroid could bring us. A whole host of valuable minerals. Due to their highly inconvenient locations in deep space, like in the asteroid belt, these space rocks are extremely difficult to mine. But this would change if an asteroid landed on Earth. Just a single asteroid is estimated to contain a ridiculous amount of gold. 700 quintillion. That's enough zeros to give every person on Earth $93 billion. And there are other elements that we might be able to extract as well. Cobalt, platinum, nickel. In fact, the pressure with which the asteroid crashes can transform one element into a more valuable one. For instance, at a meteorite crash site in Australia, a rare mineral, rhyodite, was found. It was formed out of zircon as a result of the high pressure and temperature of the impact. And, mining these elements from asteroids could free us from the human rights issues that have been part and parcel of traditional mining. Caliber mining follows ethical mining practices, but not every mining company does. In addition, mining asteroids would be more environmentally friendly, free of the danger of releasing toxins like lead and arsenic into our water. Today, large impact craters in South Africa and Canada are already being mined. They're rich sources of nickel and gold. The devastation from the crash of an asteroid would be horrific, but if it turns out it's unavoidable, that devastation may hold the clue to new resources and new growth. But this is what would happen if the Chicxulub asteroid hit Earth.
Oh my god.
Is it a meteor shower? Space debris? No, it's something much, much worse. Our nearest neighbor is a full moon no more. The moon exploded and splintered into millions of fragments. Enormous lunar rocks are hurtling toward Earth. Could this
Wipe us off the face of the planet? How could the moon explode in the first place? And if we do survive, how would losing the moon change life as we know it? This is What If? And here's what would happen if the moon exploded. Okay, so how on earth did the moon blow up? A blast mining operation gone wrong? A nuclear blast? A collision with a rogue planet? Whatever caused this catastrophe, you'd have to be packing some serious firepower to blow up the moon.
Guns. Lots of guns.
The largest nuclear bomb ever built, the Tsar Bomba, had the energy of over 57 million tons of TNT. Think that's strong enough? It's just a drop in the ocean compared to the amount of force you'd need to blow up the moon. You'd need the power of over 600 billion Tsar Bombas to destroy the moon. With anything less than that, the moon would just crack into pieces, and its gravity would pull it back together again. But if someone, or something, managed to explode the moon, it would spell bad news for us. The moon debris would scatter across the solar system, some into the abyss of outer space, and some headed straight for Earth. Earth's gravitational pull would immediately start to attract the moon rocks. As the moon's remains start to pick up speed, they would come crashing down into the atmosphere. Luckily, most of the smaller debris would burn up before it reaches us. Any larger pieces that got through would be traveling much slower than a similar-sized asteroid. The damage they'd cause wouldn't amount to much. But is it just me, or is it getting a little hot in here? The moon chunks aren't causing much damage, but the endless barrage of debris on our atmosphere would start to heat up the Earth. The whole world would start to get hotter and hotter, eventually getting to the point of incinerating all life. Talk about a bad way to go. Oh, and if you're thinking about trying to evacuate Earth, you better do it as soon as possible. The moon debris, combined with all the satellites it would destroy in space, would make any trip out nearly impossible. But what if you did manage to get out of Dodge or hunker down in the deepest parts of the Earth? What would life be like in the aftermath? Well, for some of us, it wouldn't get any cooler. The moon helps stabilize the Earth's axial tilt. It's what gives us seasons. With a new tilt, some parts of the Earth could be constantly exposed to the sun. In the worst case, the polar regions could start rapidly melting, raising sea levels and drowning out parts of the world. As the debris settles, the skies could look a little different. The remaining moon rock might cluster around the Earth, forming a giant ring like Saturn. But don't stop and stare too long. Every once in a while, some of the debris could rain down onto the Earth. Over billions of years, the moon's gravitational pull slowed down the Earth's rotation, giving us our 24-hour days. Without the moon, the Earth would start to rotate faster and faster. We'd have shorter days and stronger winds. Birds and insects would have a tough time surviving the harsh winds. Not only that, ocean tides would start to die down into tiny little waves. The moon's gravity helps create tides on Earth. Bummed out that you can't rip some gnarly waves anymore? Well, dude, there'll be a much bigger problem. It would wipe out all of the sea creatures that rely on the tides and ocean currents for survival. Our whole world would be literally flipped upside down. The Earth would burn up. Our days would be shorter, and the moon wouldn't be there to light up the night sky.
What if the moon suddenly began getting closer to Earth, to the point where it was on a collision course with our planet? Would Earth survive the crash? Or would a crash even happen? would the moon get torn up by Earth's gravity? What would this crumbled up moon look like from Earth? This is What If, and here's what would happen if the moon fell to Earth. The moon is Earth's only natural satellite, and the largest object to brighten our night sky. It's the first and only place beyond Earth where humans have set foot. The moon's gravitational pull causes tides on Earth, tides that might have been the encouragement for life in our oceans to move on land. This pull also keeps Earth from wobbling on its axis, making our climate relatively stable. In short, the moon makes Earth a more livable place. So, what if it suddenly sped up and started driving in Earth's direction? The moon's plan to destroy Earth by bumping into it would break into pieces the moment it reaches the Roche limit. The moon itself would shatter, never making it to Earth's surface. And that's going to look very impressive. But wait, what is this Roche limit? In celestial mechanics, it's the point at which the gravity holding a satellite together is weaker than the tidal forces trying to pull it apart. In other words, the moon can only get as close as 18,470 kilometers away from our planet before boom, the tidal forces would tear it apart. All of the footprints and flags we've left on the moon, all of its craters and valleys would scatter to form a breathtaking ring of debris above Earth's equator, 37,000 kilometers in diameter, making Earth the second planet in the solar system, after Saturn, to have this striking ring of beauty. The difference being that our rings wouldn't last long. The chunks of our former satellite, the moon, would rain down on Earth. It would be as if hundreds of thousands of asteroids were falling down on us and wiping out entire cities in the process. Once the moon began its trajectory towards the planet, it would increase the tidal impact it has on us. By the time it hit the Roche limit, it would be causing tides as high as 7,600 meters. Our world would be devastated by an army of tsunamis, 10 times a day. But for a short time, hardcore surfers would enjoy riding some tasty waves. On the other hand, this might be a solution to global warming. With the moon coming closer and closer, Earth's rotation would speed up. Our days would become shorter and shorter, global temperatures would go down, and no one would worry about climate change anymore. Unless asteroids burned the Earth to a crisp, then there would be no one to worry about anything. I really wouldn't worry about it anyway. In fact, the moon is drifting away from us at a rate of 4 centimeters per year, so it's unlikely we'll get to see those pretty Saturn-like rings here on Earth.
This is What If, and here's what would happen if the sun exploded tomorrow. That star at the center of our solar system, that super hot ball of plasma that gives us heat and energy, and amazing complexions. Well, it's a ticking time bomb. The sun is 4.5 billion years old, but it's only expected to last about another 5 billion years. After that, the sun will expand, becoming a red giant. Then, it will shrink to become a white dwarf, a dying star, cooling for the next several billion years. Of course, we'll all be long gone before any of that happens, but still, can you imagine what it would be like to watch the sun blow up before your very eyes? With a name like supernova, you'd think that a solar explosion would be the most magnificent fireworks show the world has ever seen. But in reality, you likely wouldn't see anything. The sun is 150 million kilometers away from Earth, and it takes 8 minutes for light from the sun to reach us. And while that may seem super far away, in supernova terms, we don't stand a chance. For Earth to be completely safe from a supernova, we'd need to be at least 50 to 100 light years away. But the good news is that if the sun were to explode tomorrow, the resulting shockwave wouldn't be strong enough to destroy the whole Earth. Only the side facing the sun would boil away instantly. The lucky other half would experience a rise in temperature that would be 15 times hotter than the sun's current surface temperature, and permanent darkness. And without the sun's mass keeping us in orbit, Earth would likely start floating off into space, while its remaining inhabitants desperately struggle to stay alive. There is a chance that our planet could lock into orbit around another star that might provide the same light and heat as our Sun, but by the time that happened, we'd all be long gone. If we knew in advance the day that the Sun would explode, then we could buy ourselves as many as 1,000 years of time, provided we had the resources to sustain ourselves for that long. And we could. Just a few meters below the ground you walk on, the Earth is maintaining a temperature of about 17 degrees. So if we had enough time to prepare, civilization could continue to live by moving underground into a huge network of fortified bunkers. Within a week after the explosion, the surface temperature on Earth would drop to minus 18 degrees. Within a year, temperatures would plummet to about minus 73 degrees. At this point, the oceans would begin to freeze from the top down. Within 1,000 years, Earth's atmosphere would freeze and collapse, leaving anything left on the surface exposed to cosmic radiation and meteor impacts. Hopefully, by that point, we'd have found ourselves a new home. The good news is that if the Sun were to explode, and it will eventually happen, it wouldn't happen overnight. When the Sun does die, it will be a long, slow, arduous process taking place over billions of years. The Sun will get hotter and brighter, and it will start to expand. During this process, it will lose its outer layers to the cosmos, leading to the creation of other stars and planets, in the same way that the violent burst of the Big Bang created Earth. Who knows? Maybe new life could form. Can you imagine another Earth? A new humanoid species? It's hard to predict how our galaxy might look billions of years from now, and it's especially hard to imagine our solar system without the great golden anchor that keeps us all together. But one day, in the very, very distant future, the Sun will expand, and then it will shrink, maybe leaving room for a new star to take its place. And if by some miracle humanity still exists at that point, where might we be living? Can you imagine your descendants being born on a space station? What if, instead of shining brightly for another 5 billion years, the only star in our solar system turned into a dark and cold remnant, a black dwarf? How long would the Earth last without all the heat and light it gets from the Sun? And how would the Sun going dark change the universe? This is What If, and here's what would happen if our Sun turned into a black dwarf. All stars have an expiration date. They don't just fade to black though. Stars like our Sun don't have enough mass to become a neutron star. They end up expanding to red giants and then shedding their outer layers until only their core remains. That's when they become white dwarfs. White dwarfs don't have fusion reactions fueling them up. They gradually cool down until one day they become black dwarfs. The thing is, there are no black dwarfs anywhere in the universe. Black dwarfs just haven't formed yet. You see, white dwarfs may not produce any energy, but they still have enough of it left to keep them shining, faintly, for hundreds of billions of years. Given that the universe is only 13.8 billion years old, even the oldest white dwarfs are still glowing at temperatures of a few thousand degrees Kelvin. In the case of our Sun, it will take another quadrillion years for it to cool down and become a black dwarf. That's 1 million years from now, give or take a few millions. Think humans will be around for that long? Well, let's switch it up. What if the Sun burnt out tomorrow? I hope you have a good supply of batteries on hand because the entire solar system would be thrown into darkness. Put on a few sweaters because it would become much colder too. Planetarily speaking, we're pretty spoiled here on Earth. With all the heat and light provided by the Sun, we're able to make a comfortable home on a rock hurtling through space at 110,000 kilometers per hour. It's easy to forget that we're just another speck in the universe. But if the Sun stopped burning, it would be immediately evident that we're just floating in space.
After the first week without the sun's heat, the Earth's surface temperature would drop to 0 degrees Celsius. After a year, it would go down even more, dropping to a freezing cold -100. That is, if the sun turned into a black dwarf instantly, which is unlikely, even for our hypothetical scenario. Realistically, to become a black dwarf, the sun would have to go through all stages of the stellar life cycle. From the main sequence star it is now, the sun would expand into a red giant, fade out to a white dwarf state, and only then cool down to become a black dwarf. At the red giant stage, it would bake the Earth, most likely swallowing it completely along with Venus and Mercury. At least we wouldn't have to worry about freezing to death once the sun shrank to a black dwarf. What about the rest of the planets, the ones lucky enough to have evaded the burning flames of the red giant? Well, they'd keep orbiting that remnant of the sun as if nothing had happened. Even though the sun would shrink to the size of the Earth, its mass would stay the same, meaning that its gravitational pull would remain unchanged. In the grand scale of the universe, the death of the sun wouldn't change anything either. The sun would be just another star to go dark, too small and insignificant to make the universe even a tiny bit darker.
Pretty interesting. You know, along those lines, one of the questions I get asked most is, what if the sun burnt out tomorrow? Well, that's actually a distant second. The question I get asked most is, and do you want fries with that? And the answer is invariably, yeah, I do, actually. Now, later on, we'll have a look at what would happen if Earth was sucked into a black hole. Maybe that's not going to happen in our lifetime. The nearest black hole is thought to be over 1,500 light years away, so not going to swallow us in 2024. But what about a threat a little closer to home? What about that big yellow orb in the sky?
The sun's core is shrinking. But as its core shrinks, the sun itself grows larger. And it will continue to grow until one day it engulfs the Earth. How long can you survive? What will happen to the oceans? And will other planets be affected? This is What If, and here's what would happen if the sun swallowed the Earth. Every 1 billion years, the sun becomes 10% hotter. But here on What If, we're going to take billions of years and condense the action into 1 month. Get ready, because we're going to be moving really fast this time. Instead of 1 billion years, it would only take 4 days for the sun to become 10% hotter. This means you'll see the Earth engulfed by the sun in just 1 month. That is, if you're still around to witness the final event. On day 1, you'd be blissfully unaware of the tragedy about to befall Earth. Maybe it's a little hotter, but that's just weather. It happens. But by day 4, space agencies across the globe would be sounding the alarm bells. By this time, the sun would be about 10% brighter and hotter. And while 10% doesn't sound like a lot, it will be the beginning of the end for us. As the sun heats up, more and more water from Earth's surface will evaporate into the atmosphere. This will increase the greenhouse gas effect, causing global temperatures to skyrocket. All of a sudden, it will become very humid and very hot. But the sun's high-energy light would bombard the atmosphere, splitting those water molecules into hydrogen and oxygen. Earth will begin to lose its water, and you won't be able to escape the lethal radiation on Earth's surface. If you want to survive, you'll have to go deep underground. But even under a protective layer of Earth's soil, you won't be safe for long. By day 16,
the sun would be almost 40% brighter. Our planet's oceans will boil, and there won't be any moisture left in the atmosphere. The beautiful, lush Earth that you grew up on will become a hot, dry, barren rock. Around day 20, the sun would run out of hydrogen, so instead, it will start to burn helium in its core. The sun is now a red giant star and would expand rapidly while losing its mass. The sun's gravitational pull on Earth would be weakened, and our planet would begin to drift away from the expanding sun. But not far enough. According to researchers Klaus-Peter Schroeder and Robert C. Smith, the Earth would only have moved about 0.0002 astronomical units. An astronomical unit is the distance between Earth and the Sun. While Earth is moving away from the encroaching Sun, the red giant would grow up to 1.2 astronomical units in radius. The Sun would be larger than Earth's orbit. It would swallow the planet whole. Once it's inside the Sun's atmosphere, Earth would collide with particles of gas and spiral inward. And Earth wouldn't be the only casualty of the expanding Sun. Mercury and Venus would be vaporized. The rings of Saturn would melt. Pluto would become much warmer. And if there is a liquid surface and a thick atmosphere on this distant dwarf planet, it might even become inhabitable. Unfortunately, 30 days doesn't give the human race enough time to prepare for such a catastrophic event.
The last time the world witnessed a total solar eclipse was in 2017, and its presence delighted enthusiastic skywatchers.
This is absolutely insane.
But what if, instead of a rare phenomena, a total solar eclipse became an everyday thing? Would you live in complete darkness? When does a total solar eclipse occur? And what would happen to the moon? This is What If, and here's what would happen if there were a permanent solar eclipse. A dragon devouring the sun, a giant puma demon, a pair of sky wolves. Throughout history and across cultures, an eclipse has been interpreted as a perplexing or fearful event. Even the 2017 total eclipse raised claims of impending apocalypse by evangelist groups in the United States. But what if the next eclipse didn't end? In this scenario, we're talking about a total solar eclipse, which only happens under very specific circumstances. First, it has to be a new moon phase. Second, the moon has to be at its closest position to Earth, also called perigee. And third, the moon has to be directly in front of the sun.
It's like a sunset all the way around me.
This rare planetary alignment would suddenly become a normal occurrence. But don't worry, you wouldn't live in the moon's shadow all the time.
There are two parts to the moon's shadow. The umbra is the dark center, and the penumbra is the outside edge where only part of the sun is blocked by the moon. The umbra has a diameter of 267 kilometers, which is about the size of the state of West Virginia in the United States. Because of the Earth's axis, this large shadow would sweep across different parts of the globe during different seasons. The rest of the planet would be in the penumbra. You'd still get sunlight, just not as much as you used to, and life would certainly be a little dimmer. Existence on Earth is closely tied to the transition of day to night. A total solar eclipse would disrupt this pattern and wreak havoc on other natural cycles. Under the umbra, the temperature would drop about 5 degrees. Even minimal fluctuations have significant impact. Temperature changes and lack of sunshine are not great for agriculture, so we would have to get creative with growing our crops in this new cycle of light and dark. We would also see an increase in seasonal affective disorder, or SAD. This subtype of depression occurs during long winter months in high latitudes with lack of sunshine. You'd probably feel some of the same hopelessness and loss of energy under the moon's shadow. Though we'd have to come up with a new diagnosis, maybe eclipse affective disorder. In a typical total solar eclipse, the umbra moves across the globe from west to east, lasting only about 7.5 minutes. This is because the moon rotates around the Earth, making a static eclipse impossible. So the only way we could see a permanent solar eclipse is if the moon stopped rotating around the Earth. Without its own trajectory, the moon wouldn't be able to resist the gravitational pull from Earth and would eventually destroy us. If that were the case, then a total eclipse really would be a doomsday warning. Observing a total solar eclipse is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Let's hope it stays the marvel it is. Life on Earth relies on the predictable pattern of the sun and the moon, and we would be in big trouble if our orderly cosmos changed.
Permanent darkness? Sounds like life on YouTube before What If came on the scene. Want some enlightenment? Well, why not get yourself a copy of the What If 100? 100 of our most popular hypothetical scenarios explained with science and bound in a beautiful hardcover with a foreword written by friend of the show, theoretical physicist Dr. Michio Kaku. You can pick one up at our merch store. That's shop.underknown.com. And there's heaps of other cool What If stuff there too. Shirts, hats, beanies, coffee mugs. Go on, start the year off right. Make friends and influence people by wearing a What If branded t-shirt like me.
Whoa, watch your head. Some seriously big asteroids are crashing into Earth. What kind of shapes and sizes do they have? Which ones would have the deadliest impact? And which one would be most likely to hit us? Uh-oh, get your bunker ready. This is What If, and here's what would happen if the largest asteroid hit Earth. Okay, let's get the terminology out of the way. I say asteroids, but some of the objects on our list are not asteroids. They're comets. Both asteroids and comets are objects in our solar system, but they aren't the same. Asteroids are rocky leftovers from the early formation of our planetary neighborhood. And of the over 1 million that we know of, most orbit the Sun in the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter. On the other hand, comets are snowballs made of frozen gases, rock, and dust. They orbit the Sun, and when they get too close, they start to melt. This releases a giant cloud of dust and gas that can be larger than most planets. With 3,000 known comets in the solar system, could a few be ready to turn the Earth into a giant cloud of dust too? Chelyabinsk meteorite. Let's start with a smaller object that has already hit our planet. Meet the Chelyabinsk meteorite. It exploded over Russia in February of 2013. With a diameter of about 17 meters, it was relatively small, but the impact was huge. The explosion had the energetic equivalent of 500,000 tons of TNT. That's about 30 times as powerful as the bomb that was dropped on Hiroshima. It injured 1,200 people and caused enormous property damage. Pretty big effects from a little extraterrestrial visitor. Chicxulub. Moving on to something bigger, we'll go 65 million years into the past. The massive Chicxulub asteroid was likely one of the forces that resulted in the mass extinction of the dinosaurs. It was about 10 to 15 kilometers wide, and its impact crater in Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula measures 180 kilometers wide and 900 meters deep. Whoa! When this asteroid slammed into Earth, it devastated everything nearby. The blast wave sent enormous amounts of rocky material into the atmosphere, and it caused tsunamis as high as 1,500 meters. While all the soot didn't completely block out the sun, it reduced the amount of sunlight reaching the surface of our planet. That seriously devastated plant growth and had rippling consequences on the food chain. Eventually, it caused entire ecosystems to collapse. Oumuamua. Of all the objects that could collide with us, Oumuamua has one of the more interesting shapes. This rocky, cigar-shaped object is about 400 meters in length. NASA classifies it as a comet, but it exhibits traits of an asteroid too. And it doesn't have an attachment to any star system, so we don't know where in space it originates from. In 2017, it passed by the Earth at a distance of 41 million kilometers. Now, while we were safe from impact on that occasion, it could have resulted in a lot of destruction. If this interstellar guest crashed into Earth, darkness would cover our planet. And if the dust and debris stayed in our atmosphere for a long time, it would kill many plants, animals, and humans that depend on the sun. Bennu. Bennu is not only an asteroid you should worry about, it's the asteroid you should worry about. It has a 1 in 1,700 chance of colliding with Earth in September of the year 2182. At only half a kilometer wide, it's relatively small, but remember how significant the Chelyabinsk impact was? Yeah, with that in mind, you might be a little nervous when it makes a close approach to Earth every 6 years. Shoemaker-Levy 9. This next comet doesn't have any chance of hitting Earth. That's because it already collided with Jupiter in 1994. But you could imagine the destruction this 1.5 to 2 kilometer wide comet would have caused on our home turf. It broke into 20 pieces as a result of Jupiter's gravity. The collisions from these fragments were so powerful that they were similar to the detonations of about 300 million atomic bombs. Plumes of debris shot as high as 2,000 to 3,000 kilometers, and the atmosphere heated to scorching temperatures of 30,000 to 40,000 degrees. You must be pretty relieved that Shoemaker-Levy 9 never hit us. Ceres. Last, but far from the least, is an asteroid so big it's technically classified as a dwarf planet. Ceres is the largest object in the asteroid belt. It makes up 25% of the belt's total mass. The radius of Ceres is 476 kilometers. That makes it over 60 times larger than our ancient friend Chicxulub. If Ceres collided with Earth, there wouldn't just be devastation. There would be no Earth. The size of Ceres alone would block out the sun as it approached. And then, The impact would remove 10 kilometers of the Earth's crust. Hypersonic shockwaves would ripple across the globe. Everything in its path would be incinerated and leveled. Nothing would stand a chance of surviving. Our planet would essentially turn into a glowing ball of fire and melted rock. If by some miracle or secret underground bunker you survived, well, you wouldn't last long. Soot in the atmosphere would result in something like a nuclear winter. A giant asteroid is heading our way! But no, it won't hit the Earth. This asteroid is about to slam into the moon and crack it right in half. What would it be like to witness this epic collision? Would the moon break clean in two? Or would it shatter into a million pieces? And how could one of those pieces wipe out life here on Earth? This is What If, and here's what would happen if an asteroid cracked the moon in half. Before getting into our scenario, let me tell you about the time long ago when the moon almost exploded. It was a beautiful summer night in England in the year 1178. And 1 hour after sunset, people witnessed a spectacular phenomenon. A giant flame appeared around the upper part of that evening's crescent moon. And right before their eyes, the moon appeared to split in two before turning black. At least this is how the event was recorded by the local chronicler. As you could probably guess, the moon didn't actually split in half that night. It's possible that what these people saw was a large asteroid slamming into it. But an event like this would have sent massive amounts of lunar material toward Earth. More likely, what they witnessed was a meteorite entering the atmosphere and crossing their line of sight directly in front of the moon. This would have given the illusion of it splitting in two in a fiery fashion. But who needs illusions or questionable historical accounts when we could imagine what would really happen? Just get ready to avoid falling moon rocks. The moon is bombarded by hundreds of asteroids and meteorites every year. And without an atmosphere like we enjoy back on Earth, these objects don't burn up before impact. So even a meteorite as small as 25 centimeters across could have a big impact on the moon. In 2006, one approximately this size slammed into it. From Earth, the impact looked like a flash that lasted only 0.4 of a second. But it created a crater about 14 meters long and 3 meters deep. Taking things up a notch, a 40-centimeter meteoroid slammed into the moon at a speed of 90,100 kilometers per hour. This was such an intense collision that it caused a flash as bright as some of the stars in the night sky. That means when this happened in 2013, you could look up and see the events unfolding without a telescope. For 1 whole second, at least. The likeliest contender within our solar system of doing some serious damage to the moon would be Ceres. It's the largest object found in the belt between Jupiter and Mars. While it's technically classified as a dwarf planet, it's still only about 1/4 as large as the moon. But even that wouldn't be enough to break the moon in two, or at least to knock it out of its orbit. For that, you'd need an asteroid almost the same size as the moon itself. And if this happened, you'd know it right away. About 1.3 seconds after impact, you'd see the moon being torn apart. Massive amounts of debris would be hurtling toward Earth. Some of this debris could be even larger than the asteroid that caused the mass extinction of the dinosaurs. But before you start picturing the life on Earth wiped out scenario, things might not be as bad as you think. Normally, Earthbound asteroids travel at speeds faster than 100 kilometers per second.
But it would be different for the chunks of the broken moon and the moon-destroying asteroid. These would have much lower speeds, and with that, much less energetic impacts. If you were lucky, the impact from even the most colossal pieces of lunar debris would release only 1% of the energy of a similar-sized asteroid. Adding to your luck, you'd get to witness a meteor shower of truly epic proportions as smaller bits of debris would burn up in the atmosphere. And this epic collision wouldn't result in two split halves of the moon now orbiting around Earth. Sadly, you'd have to kiss the moon goodbye. It would be shattered into a million pieces. But if it were to somehow break more or less in two, there would be a chance you wouldn't even know. At least not right away. That's because the asteroid could have split the moon right between the side that always faces Earth and its dark side. You could still see the front of the moon beaming down on you. Eventually, the two halves could escape each other's gravity, revealing two hemispheres in the night sky. And they'd stay like that for a long time, at least until the effects of gravity pulling each half from all sides shape them into similar spheres. But that would take millions, if not billions, of years. If the moon is blown to bits, our night sky would be permanently transformed into a dazzling sea of stars. Venus would become the new brightest object, despite the fact that it's 14,000 times less bright than the moon once was. Some of the more drastic consequences of the moon being destroyed would start to make your life difficult. The moon is responsible for the Earth's 23.4-degree tilt on its axis. Without it, this tilt could become as much as 45 degrees. That would make our planet spin nearly on its side, and this would mean the sun would no longer shine directly over the equator. Instead, it would beam down closer to the North and South poles. This would trigger some extreme weather and could lead to ice ages that occur on different parts of the planet as often as every few thousand years. And the tides would never be the same again. Earth's powerful tides are caused by the moon's gravitational pull on our oceans. The sun's gravitational pull on our sea levels is only about half of what the moon can pull off. No longer having the moon in our orbit would lower sea levels and have a huge effect on ecosystems in intertidal zones. Tidal wetlands species would now have even more fierce competition for food and shelter. This could really endanger a lot of marine life, like sea turtles. The rising and falling of tides is an extremely important factor in giving their offspring the best chance of survival.
We just can't get away from these everybody dies scenarios. Good luck with that one. But to be honest, comparably, the moon is just a pretty small rock circling in our orbit. It's more likely that the asteroid would hit us here on Earth. Well, hopefully before it does, we'll get the chance to make more cool videos for you. And you can help us by joining our Patreon. Join the What If Explorers Club on Patreon. We'll give you all the top secret behind the scenes, the extended director's cuts, mind-blowing art, epic merch discounts, and our endless love and gratitude. You even get the opportunity to pitch us ideas for upcoming episodes. Now, speaking of upcoming episodes, coming up we'll show you what would happen if Earth got sucked into a black hole. But forget black holes for a second. What if Earth got swallowed up by one of our neighbors in the solar system? Well, there's one hungry gas giant out there who has made a meal of a planet before. Who knows if they'll do it again?
You start your day hearing wild news. Jupiter has just swallowed Saturn. And it doesn't stop there. Jupiter is on its way to swallow every planet in the solar system. How big would Jupiter get? What would you see from Earth? And
Would Jupiter get rings like Saturn? This is What If, and here's what would happen if Jupiter swallowed every planet in the solar system. Jupiter has swallowed a planet before. Around 4.5 billion years ago, a protoplanet slammed into the young Jupiter. The protoplanet was 10 times Earth's mass, made of rocky and icy material. Jupiter's core broke apart and denser material mixed with hydrogen and helium. A few billion years later, the heavy material settled back into the dense core that we see today. Now, swallowing a single planet is one thing, but could Jupiter eat up all 7? In this scenario, you're going to see the planets get swallowed from largest to smallest, although we're saving Earth for last. Jupiter's first victim would be Saturn. From Earth, you could see these gas giants as 2 bright stars. And if you were to look up at the night sky as Jupiter swallows Saturn, well, all you'd see is Jupiter getting super bright. But if you were closer to the action, you'd see complete chaos. Jupiter is only 3 times heavier than Saturn, so it would be swallowing a planet that's almost its size. First, their moons would collide, creating massive amounts of debris. Some moon remnants would rain down on Jupiter, and some of the debris would float in space. As Jupiter was crashing into Saturn, Jupiter's surface temperature would become hotter than the Sun's outer layer. Whatever remained of Saturn would mix in with Jupiter's atmosphere. They would become one. Now, swallowing Saturn would increase Jupiter's mass and gravity by 30%. Jupiter would also sport prominent new rings from the shattered moons. Next, it would envelop the 2 ice giants, Uranus and Neptune. The 27 moons of Uranus would collide with the rings of Jupiter, adding to the floating debris. Uranus has an icy core made of water, methane, and ammonia, but Neptune's inner core is rocky. Regardless, both cores would melt as the planets crashed into Jupiter. Now, Jupiter would be almost 40% heavier, and it would head towards its first rocky planetary snacks. The rocky planets, Venus and Mars, wouldn't even make it to Jupiter's core. They'd burn up in Jupiter's atmosphere as if they were mere asteroids. Then we'd see our last planetary neighbor disappear inside this bulked-up Jupiter. Mercury is even smaller than Jupiter's largest moon, Ganymede, so it would get ripped apart by Jupiter's rings, adding to the speedy debris. Now, only Earth and Jupiter would be left, and Earth would be in big trouble. But how would Jupiter go about swallowing our planet? You know, even in its normal state, without swallowing 6 planets, Jupiter's gravitational force affects Earth. Yeah, every 405,000 years, the pull of Jupiter and Venus makes Earth's orbit wobble. It causes hotter summers, colder winters, and more rainfall in the tropics. And now, Jupiter's gravitational pull would be over 40% stronger. But Jupiter's pull would still be no match for the Sun's gravitational force, so Jupiter would have to come for Earth just like it swallowed all the other planets in our solar system. Jupiter doesn't have a hard surface like the rocky planets. You could say Jupiter is a big, dense ball of gas. Its surface is defined as the point where its atmospheric pressure is equal to Earth's. Well, so could Earth simply pass through? No. Just like the rest of the planets, Earth and all life on it would be toast. First, we'd be bombarded by asteroids while passing through Jupiter's rings. I doubt anyone would survive this, but if they did, they would see the Earth igniting as it enters Jupiter's atmosphere. Jupiter is so massive that
even if it were to swallow its 7 planetary neighbors, it wouldn't even double in size. Now, what would happen if Jupiter continued to grow? Well, even if Jupiter increased its mass by 400%, it would stay about the same size. But the extra mass would make Jupiter so dense that it would start pulling in on itself. Yeah, it would get smaller instead of larger. And if Jupiter were to increase its mass by 70,000%, well, it could trigger a fusion reaction and light up like a star. When it comes to planets in our solar system's habitable zone, one world is too close to the Sun, another is too far, and Earth is just right. But maybe things would be different if Venus and Mars simply swapped orbits. What makes these planets impossible to live on right now? What changes would they undergo when they traded places? And why would you need Jupiter to give these planets a chance at supporting life? This is What If, and here's what would happen if Venus and Mars swapped orbits. Our solar system's habitable zone, otherwise known as the Goldilocks zone, is the distance from a star where liquid water could exist on the surface of a planet. As long as conditions aren't too hot or too cold, life could be possible, just like on Earth. But simply occupying prime real estate in the habitable zone isn't a guarantee that a rocky planet is actually habitable. Both Venus and Mars orbit within this region too, and yet no life. Despite being of a similar size and with roughly the same surface gravity as Earth, Venus is too hot to hold liquid water. And dense. Its atmosphere is 90 times denser than our own, and the surface temperature is a scorching 462 degrees Celsius. On the other end of the Goldilocks zone, Mars is also quite Earth-like, except way colder, drier, and dustier. Its average surface temperature is minus 46 degrees Celsius, and it has an atmosphere about 1% as thick as Earth's. So if we swapped things around, would Venus and Mars transform themselves into perfectly livable planets?
Hey, all I need to make my planet livable is a decent grill and some Omaha steaks. Hey, and as Father's Day is approaching, let me give you some advice on what Dad wants. It's steaks. And right now, you can give him this mouth-watering gift for just $99. It's a limited-time package that includes 16 of their tastiest entrees. I'm talking tender, smoky bacon-wrapped filet mignon, gourmet jumbo franks, and air-chilled boneless chicken breasts. And to top it all off, delicious caramel apple tartlets. You getting hungry yet? Well, stop buying the same lame ties for Dad and give them the experience they've been craving. Get this deal now. Visit omahasteaks.com and type "What If" in the search bar to order the Dads Want Steaks package. Order now and get 8 of their new, bigger Omaha Steaks burgers absolutely free. And remember, everything is backed by their 100% money-back guarantee. Now, if you'll excuse me, I like my steaks like I like this new Mars. Just a little red. Bringing the red planet into Venus's orbit would put it at a distance of approximately 108 million kilometers from the Sun. This would bring it halfway closer to the Sun than it was before. Being so much closer, Mars would get a significant boost in the amount of sunlight it receives, and that alone can make the surface temperature climb to a balmy 32 degrees Celsius. Just like the Earth's tropics. But without a thick atmosphere or oceans, all this new heat wouldn't stay on the planet. Just like in Earth's deserts, Mars would see extreme temperature differences between day and night. The thin Martian atmosphere would make it difficult for water to stay liquid. With such a low surface pressure, water would boil at a lower temperature. Evaporation would happen much quicker. Looks like if you want to see life flourish on Mars, you'd have to take a slightly more hands-on approach. But first, let's check out how Venus is doing in its new neck of the woods. You'd now find Venus located 228 million kilometers away from the Sun. That's twice as far as it used to be. And naturally, you'd think, surely this scorching planet would be starting to cool down. Well, as it turns out, the planet's high surface temperatures have a lot more to do with its thick atmosphere than its overall closeness to the Sun. Venus has a very high albedo, which means that it reflects about 75% of the incoming sunlight. So it could be that the planet's temperature remains more or less just as hot as before. Even as the upper parts of the atmosphere slowly cool enough for the albedo effect to decrease, that would mean that Venus could now absorb a larger amount of incoming sunlight, so that temperature wouldn't start to drop all that much. Another setback on the road to becoming a life-supporting planet would be that Venus's atmosphere is mostly comprised of carbon dioxide, with small amounts of nitrogen and clouds of sulfuric acid. What you still wouldn't find nearly enough of is water. The concentration of water in Venus's atmosphere is 100 times too low for even the most resilient organisms back on Earth to survive. But since you went through all the effort of bringing both planets from one end of the habitable zone to the other, why not take things a little further? You could try terraforming the planets to make them a little more livable. One way you could increase the surface pressure of Mars would be to try releasing all the carbon dioxide found in its soil and minerals. The only problem here is that the red planet would need to reach temperatures above 300 degrees Celsius. And despite this new location so close to the Sun, Mars wouldn't ever get this hot. Besides, if you could release all of that precious greenhouse gas, it would only amount to an atmospheric pressure of about 10 to 14% of Earth's. There simply isn't enough carbon dioxide on the red planet. Even if you had been successful with that effort, you'd still be unable to breathe on Mars. One option for dealing with this would involve bringing special microorganisms to the planet that could convert the hostile Martian atmosphere into breathable air. This would be similar to what Earth was like 2.5 billion years ago. Back then, cyanobacteria converted our methane and ammonia-rich atmosphere into the oxygen-rich one you enjoy today. But ultimately, this would be a big waste of time and resources. You'd find that with Mars's weak magnetic field, it wouldn't be able to hold on to any atmosphere you could create. That would be thanks to the power of solar winds that would constantly strip away whatever atmosphere you'd managed to generate. And sitting in Venus's old orbit, solar winds would be almost 5 times as dense as Mars is used to. Way out on Venus, the question of creating conditions for life could come down to whether you could manage to form an ocean on the planet. And that would entail bombarding the atmosphere with hydrogen. As hydrogen is introduced to the atmosphere, it would react with the carbon dioxide, leading to the formation of water. Introduce enough hydrogen and you could eventually see Venus with 80% of its surface covered in water. For this to work, you'd need a lot of hydrogen. So much that you'd probably need to find a way to harvest it from a gas giant like Jupiter or Saturn, or maybe one of their moons. Yeah, I'm not sure all this planet moving and hydrogen bombarding was really worth it. You'd still be left with only one Goldilocks planet capable of supporting life.
Could a black hole devour us all one day?
There are millions of them out there, just waiting. And if we happened to make a black hole accidentally, well, you better fasten your seatbelts. Things are really going to suck. Literally. What would we see if we got pulled into a black hole? Could Earth orbit the sun and a black hole? And would we survive spaghettification? This is What If, and here's what would happen if Earth were sucked into a black hole. Just 3,000 light years from Earth is a black hole visible to the naked eye. Thankfully, we're a safe distance from this stellar black hole and many others like it. There are approximately 100 million of them out there in our galaxy that we know of. They are remnants of supernovae, which occur when stars 10 to 20 times larger than our Sun collapse in on themselves. Stellar black holes are fairly common and are about 16 kilometers in diameter. And then there's the much larger competition: supermassive black holes. These have a diameter roughly the size of our solar system and a mass greater than 1 million suns combined. One of them, known as Sagittarius A, is right smack dab in the middle of our galaxy. So, how close would a black hole need to be a danger to us? Well, technically, a black hole the size of a 1 millimeter pin could destroy us if it was close enough to Earth due to its incredibly dense mass and extreme gravitational pull. Our survival all depends on whether we've surpassed the event horizon or not. You can think of this as the black hole's point of no return. Anything beyond this point would have to travel faster than light to escape. Yeah, good luck with that. If Earth got close enough, the side nearest to the black hole would begin stretching toward it. Our atmosphere would start to be vacuumed up, and then huge chunks of the Earth would rip apart and follow suit. If Earth managed to fall into the orbit of the black hole, we'd experience tidal heating. The strong, uneven gravitational pull on Earth would continuously deform the planet. This would generate a tremendous amount of internal friction, heating the Earth's core to disastrous levels. It would likely give rise to earthquakes, volcanoes, and deadly tsunamis. The trifecta of doom. Eventually, Earth would begin to stretch in a process known as spaghettification. And not in the tasty, cheesy, tomatoey way.
Mamma mia!
Let's say you were a superhero and decided to fight the black hole head first. Well, your arms would be closer than your feet, causing your body to stretch out vertically and become more and more compressed. Let's hope your superpower is elasticity. For an average-sized stellar black hole, spaghettification can occur several hundred kilometers away from the event horizon. But for a supermassive black hole, physicists believe that this would happen inside the event horizon due to its size. Eventually, no matter what size it is, anything entering a black hole would be ripped into a string of individual atoms. This would happen to anything that crosses it: people, planets, stars, you name it. Unfortunately, our whole solar system would be doomed. The careful balance of the sun and our many planets would collapse, which could send them crashing into one another. And to add insult to injury, our asteroid belt would get sucked toward us. About 200 of the 552,894 asteroids we know of are more than 100 kilometers across. So, if one hits us, we'd be dead before we would turn into spaghetti. Frankly, I'm not sure which fate would be worse.
all of the matter in our solar system would join the accretion disk around the black hole. As matter gets sucked into the black hole, it generates massive amounts of radiation, so even if we somehow survived all the asteroids, we'd likely die from the radiation. Believe it or not, astronomers have discovered rare circumbinary planets that orbit two stars. While this may be a possibility with a black hole and our sun, the extreme tidal forces would likely make our planet uninhabitable. And worse yet, we might get kicked out of orbit or swallowed by the sun or the black hole eventually. Sorry, but there's not an outcome where we win here. But, and this is a big but, maybe we could find a way to protect ourselves in some hyper-reinforced space shuttle. If we somehow made it past the event horizon, we might be in for an even stranger time. Physics as we know it would change. Things like gravity, the speed of light, and even how atoms bind and react may be completely different. The truth is, we don't know what would happen. We can't get any information out of a black hole. Would we get pulled into another dimension? End up in a parallel universe? Or maybe we're already inside a black hole.
You know, last year we set a goal for ourselves here at What If to get 10 million subscribers. We're still a bit short of that number, hovering at just under 8 million. Still respectable, but if you haven't already, why not smash that subscribe button, as the influencers say? Say, what do you think? Am I an influencer? I don't know. I guess it depends on whether or not I was able to influence you to smash that subscribe button. Did I? Well, thanks. Yeah, thank you. And, fair enough, Mom. You do you.
50,000 years ago, a space rock slammed into Earth and made a big boom. This meteorite was only about 50 meters wide, but it weighed a whopping 300,000 tons. When it smashed down into the ground, it flattened everything in the vicinity. It left a crater so lunar-like that astronauts trained there before landing on the moon. Yeah, this is Meteor Crater in Arizona. And there have been many impacts like this one in the long history of Earth. If this meteorite were to slam into New York today, it would destroy most of the city. The impact would leave a crater 1.3 kilometers wide, but the fireball would spread further. Everything within 1.7 kilometers of the impact zone would burn. Even on the outskirts of New York City, the windows would shatter and many people would perish. It would take years to recover from this disaster. But this is nowhere close to the size of some of the largest asteroid impacts Earth has seen. Some of them were so gigantic that if they smashed into us today, they would cause our extinction. Most of these asteroids crashed when Earth was very young. Well, at least in planetary years. Some 2.2 billion years ago, a pretty big asteroid made its way down to Earth, where Australia is now. It left the oldest confirmed crater on our planet. Yarrabubba crater doesn't look like much today, but when it made its fatal landing, it shook the planet quite a lot. Yarrabubba scarred the continent with a crater 70 kilometers wide. It wiped out everything in its way with a massive shockwave. Scientists even think it helped end the ice age that Earth was going through by creating so much vapor that it changed the climate. Now, imagine this giant landing on Earth today. If it hit Australia again and left a 70-kilometer crater there, the fireball would spread for 130 kilometers in all directions. If it set a course for New York, it would decimate the entire city. Even on the outskirts, everything would be on fire, and you'd get third-degree burns. But things could get so much worse if an asteroid even larger than that hit us. Like the one that crashed into Earth 1.8 billion years ago. This giant comet punctured the ground and shattered the rock. It left a crater 130 kilometers wide, where Canada is today. We call this crater Sudbury Basin, and it's one of the largest asteroid impacts Earth has seen in its history. 1.8 billion years ago was a violent time for our planet. The atmosphere was changing and continents were on the move, shaking and rupturing the land on their way. Massive asteroid collisions were part of a regular day back then. Now, if this comet hit us today, it would be a total doomsday scenario. Yeah, if the Sudbury Basin impactor landed on New York City today, well, there wouldn't be a New York City. It would feel like being caught in an earthquake that measured an 11 on the Richter scale. Everything would be shaking from this immense and loud shockwave. And everything 300 kilometers from the impact would instantly ignite. This is what the impact would look like if it landed in France. Yeah, there's no chance you're surviving this, and we haven't even got to the biggest impact yet. It's time for the dinosaur-wiping asteroid. 65 million years ago, an asteroid at least 10 kilometers wide smashed into Earth where Mexico is now and violently ended the era of giant reptiles. Now, imagine that same impact today and, well, yeah, it would be incredibly violent. The asteroid would leave a crater 180 kilometers wide, and the fireball? Well, the fireball would burn everything in a 450-kilometer radius. If this asteroid hit New York, its effects would spread as far as Canada. And the impact would be so painfully loud that it would deafen you. You wouldn't just hear it, you'd feel violent vibrations in your entire body. And if this big space rock doubled down on Mexico, well, much of the country would see the same fate the region saw when the dinosaurs died. Enormous shockwaves would cause widespread destruction hundreds of kilometers beyond the impact site. And just like 65 million years ago, the impact would cause a massive tsunami. Okay, it's bad. Really bad, but let's finally get to our #1 largest impact in history. Cue the Vredefort asteroid, the largest, almost the oldest, and the most terrifying space event on our planet's record. 2 billion years ago, a gigantic asteroid slammed into where South Africa is today. It obliterated everything. It likely changed the Earth's climate, and it most definitely killed whatever lived here before the dinosaurs. This same impact today would bring enormous death and destruction. This deadly space rock would obliterate everything for hundreds of kilometers. The crater from the impactor would be as wide as 300 kilometers. And the fireball would spread for 750 kilometers in all directions. Intense shockwaves would rush across the continent. Add to this tsunamis, earthquakes, and wildfires, and this would be a horrifying disaster. Nothing in the area could survive this. But what's worse is that the disaster wouldn't end there. All the debris, dust, and gases from the impact would block the sunlight and pollute the atmosphere. We'd be like the dinosaurs during their last days. Temperatures would plummet. The sudden climate change would cause a massive extinction event. Earth would become a pretty barren place, and humanity might not be able to come back from this. Deep under the Earth's surface, there's a scorching hot ball of metal. And scientists just discovered that something very wrong is happening to it. Did the Earth's inner core really stop spinning? What apocalyptic events could this trigger? And are we doomed to become as lifeless as Mars? This is What If, and here's what would happen if the Earth's core stopped spinning. If you were to dig straight down into our planet, well, you'd shovel through 4 distinct layers on your way to the center. First, there's the rocky crust, and that's followed by the hot liquid mantle. 2,900 kilometers later, you'd reach Earth's outer core, made up of liquid iron and nickel. Combined with the solid iron inner core, the 2 core layers of our planet are about the size of Mars. But unlike the red planet, they're scorching hot. At 10,000 degrees Celsius, well, they're hotter than the surface of the sun. And there's also a lot of movement down there. The motion of molten metal in the outer core is what's responsible for generating Earth's magnetic field. Without that, we wouldn't be able to hold on to our atmosphere and we'd lose our protection from dangerous space radiation. And the inner core of our planet is moving too. But new research suggests that it's slowing down to rotate more in sync with the rest of the planet. But slowing down isn't dramatic enough. Let's see what happens when both layers of the core stop moving completely. If only the hot, solid inner core inside the outer core stopped moving, well, you wouldn't need to worry about the apocalypse just yet. The slowing down of the inner core would mostly impact the speed at which Earth spins. It could slow our rotation down enough that our days would become longer, and over time, this could degrade our magnetic field. Yeah, that would be bad news, but not nearly as bad as what would happen if the syrupy outer core stopped spinning too. Without that layer's rotation, well, you'd have to kiss our magnetic field goodbye. And this would put Earth on a course to end up looking a lot like Mars. 4.2 billion years ago, Mars could have been warm enough to have oceans where life might have thrived. But when the red planet's core froze in place, its once strong magnetic field weakened. As the Martian magnetic field degraded, its atmosphere was chipped away by ferocious solar winds, slamming into the planet at speeds of several hundred kilometers per second. That's when the planet transformed into the dry, lifeless desert you know today. But back to Earth. Before it completely turned into a desert planet, well, things would get a little shaky. If the core was to suddenly stop rotating, the tectonic plates would violently slam into each other. It would be a lot like when your bus driver hits the brakes hard and you go flying into the other bus riders. This sudden collision of tectonic plates would cause massive earthquakes along the plate boundaries all around the world. These quakes would destroy buildings, roads, and bridges. Electricity, phone lines, and water systems would be severed. Ultimately, millions of lives would be lost and millions more people would be displaced. Now, as devastating as these earthquakes would be, the damage would just be getting started. With the disappearance of our magnetic field, you'd be exposed to dangerous cosmic radiation that would bombard the surface of our planet. These high-energy particles from the sun would interact with the abundance of nitrogen and oxygen in our atmosphere. And this would destroy our protective ozone layer, allowing more UV radiation to reach the surface. Combining these solar rays and UV radiation would be enormously harmful to all life on Earth. It would damage your DNA, leading to mutations and cancer. And the halting of the core would also make navigating the globe more difficult, Yeah, I hope you have a good trail map for your next camping trip because compasses would be totally useless. All kinds of migratory animals would lose their way too. Birds flying south would get lost and freeze to death, while sea turtles would never find their way back to the beaches that they lay their eggs on. The earthquakes caused by the core suddenly stopping would have already done significant damage to the power infrastructure around the world, but the lack of a magnetic field would continue disrupting things even more. The solar radiation bombarding the surface would damage all kinds of electronic devices and would threaten our power grids. You would end up losing power more often, maybe even permanently. But in reality, you don't have to worry about a catastrophe like this. This study, which implied that the core has stopped and we're all doomed, was a little overhyped. Scientists didn't even talk about the outer core. No, they just meant the inner core, which rotates independently from the rest of the planet. It doesn't stop or reverse its rotation, it just moves slower and faster, like it's done for the billions of years of our planet's existence.
Okay, that's it. That's the show. Thanks for joining us on this terrifying trip through several scary scenarios. Hope you liked it. Hope you learned something. Let's cross our fingers that none of these events come true this year or any year. Here's wishing you good health and prosperity in the months ahead. And as always, we'll be back soon with another What If.
An asteroid is headed straight toward Earth. Initially, scientists thought it would miss us, but they've made some serious miscalculations. And now it's headed right toward our